Hello, I'm Julia. Welcome to the MindMatters Panel. When I was at school, every now and then the school had half days and the teacher spent the afternoon in service, which, when I think about it now, must have been a group therapy session for having to deal with us. Joining me in service to talk about mental health is Young and Well Cooperative Research Centre Managing Director Dr Michael Carr-Gregg, Brain and Mind Research Institute Executive Director and Professor of Psychiatry Professor Ian Hickey, Deputy Principal Rob Blackley, and school psychologist Sarah Innes. But first, let's look at how the staff at Eagleton High describe mental health.
Our mental health strategy is all about boosting protective factors. But sometimes it can be hard for students and staff to understand exactly what we mean by that. So we say that a protective factor is like a layer of bubble wrap. Caring family is one layer, close friends is another layer. Physical health, personal resilience, and all of these various factors add up to a sort of force field that can protect you against anything that life throws at you. Isn't that right, Daniel? It's a simple activity, but it makes the concept real for them.
Mr. Bird. Oh, I'm stuck.
Well, that is a problem with the metaphor.
Will help.
Oh, it's just so hard to resist. But seriously, now look, what are the signs of a mentally healthy school?
I think it's really important to remember that it's not utopia. Not everyone's problems are solved. I think that's the first thing we need to remember. That there are going to be some struggles and people who are not coping, but it's a way we respond to those struggles and how we try to prevent them. And mental health suggests that it's not necessarily a focus on mental illness either. It's an old school approach too. It's not just focusing on individual fires that we need to put out, but looking at ways we can help students across all areas with their life.
I like the idea of a mentally healthy school being somewhere where kids feel safe and valued and listened to, and actually have the skills and the knowledge and the strategies to manage their own well-being. So that's like a priority.
And I think when you walk into a school first, you can sense those things about being safe and welcoming. You can pick that up fairly quickly when you walk into a school for the first time.
Yeah, that kind of energy. There's sort of an energy
that
happening.
vibe about the place.
Well, I think they are those schools. You walk in, you know people are connected, they know each other, there's respect, and they're the ones that then cope with adversity. You're still going to have kids with problems in really healthy schools, but they cope with the whole situation and then they support those who are in trouble, but they also support everybody else to do the best they can.
What perceptions do people have about mental health in the community?
There's certainly a greater awareness, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I think there's been a lot of work publicly where there's a more public conversation about mental illness or mental health. I have young people who will come and see me and have already researched, for instance, what they think they might be experiencing online through some of the resources that are available to them. And often they come with a diagnosis in their head. Not that I diagnose in my office, but they'll often be right. And so they've already accessed that information, felt comfortable accessing that information and comfortable accessing support within the school. Now, that's because we work really hard to make it okay to come and see the school psychologist. But I would imagine that our school can be unique in some ways because we've done a lot of work around that.
But we do need to recognise how far the Australian community's come. I mean, we started a long way back.
I would say, yes.
If you look at us compared with the rest of the world now, we're way ahead. And it is interesting, you actually look in young people, people do actually raise the issues. It's just an issue of like the language and what do we do with it.
That's
if you
exciting
say,
that Australia's ahead.
some things we win in.
Oh,
it's remarkable, isn't it?
No, but that's great.
And something about the Australian community and attitude. We've seen this in HIV/AIDS, we've seen it in a lot of drug and alcohol areas, other areas. When people are just fairly down to earth and fair income about the situation and talk fairly openly, the problem we've had is probably the language, just how to talk about these things and then what we do. So, and it is an issue when you talk about mental health. If you say we're going to talk about physical health, you start talking about diabetes, cancer, asthma, everyone goes, oh, that's a bit serious. If you go, no, actually, we're going to get fit, we're going to feel better, we're going to sleep better, that's being healthy. We haven't quite got there with mental health. So the mental health, when we talk about mental health, we need to talk about actually feeling well, feeling bright, enjoying things, pleasure, good mental health, being cognitively, bright on the ball. As distinct from, also, there are problems, anxiety, depression, substance misuse. So We just haven't got quite the rich language
True.
and then the understanding. And that's really the challenge, but we're well on the way.
Is it possible to fix kids' problems?
I don't think it's a matter of us fixing. I think that's where I come at it from a psychologist, that I'm a team member when someone comes and talks to me. And I always say to my students that I'm not the expert here in the room in your life. You are the expert in your life. I'm here to guide you through some possible solutions that you can try out. And I've got some experience that I understand the theory behind it, but I'm not going to fix those problems. I think that's important for schools to understand, that there's no quick fix. There's no one magic bullet that's going to solve.
But that's a very challenging thing to hear, because I think people think you are the expert.
Yeah, look, I think so, but also they don't want somebody either to come into their world and take over. You have to be very respectful that they are emerging, especially the age group that we're talking about today, they're emerging their own individual identity, and they need to try out things that aren't going to work. We need to help them. Resilience is all about this. We need to help them try on their own solutions and possibly fail. And that's part of learning from that, is that sort of safety net's still there with the adults in their world, the teachers and the parents that we hope that they're connected with and supported with their friendships. But it's really important that we give them the opportunity to try their own solutions on.
But there's a lot of clarification, isn't there, about what's the nature of a problem. I mean, you run into a problem the first time you're 13, 14. This is going with other physical health problem. You've got to sort out, is it something that's easily fixed? Learn a few skills, cope with that sort of anxiety, because face it's fairly challenging, and I can learn that and cope and use it again. Or is it something more, serious and requires a longer-term kind of perspective? So I'd argue some things are actually fairly fixable, fairly early, get the right skills, get the right advice, but people often don't know that. They've not been made aware that there's stuff that can be done. They're used to, in the physical health world, some easy things, pop down the GP, get it fixed. This case, pop down the psychologist, get it fixed. Other stuff, pop online, get it fixed. Teach yourself how to fix it.
But what online services are available, Michael, that can help with seeking out that kind of
Well, this is where we're really fortunate in Australia, because we've got wonderful websites like, for example, Reach Out. Now, you can, as a young person, if you're having relationship difficulties, or if you're starting at a new school, or if you think you might be same-sex attracted, you can go to this website. You can get accurate, up-to-date, reliable information in a beautifully delivered fact sheet, and you can get that kind of information. I'm very big on lamination, and I go down to Office Works.
Back to the office.
Yes, it is.
We'll get the bubble wrap and then we'll laminate. I mean, Michael, I didn't think that lamination would be a word we'd be hearing today.
There you go.
Do go on, because I love office
I go
things.
down to Office Works, I buy myself a laminator, and what I do is I laminate these fact sheets. I know people mock me for this, I don't care.
I'm not mocking.
I know, we're sharing. I'm telling you that I've got a huge sort of pile of stuff on depression, anxiety, but it's not just Reach Out, it's Beyond Blue, it's Origin, it's Black Dog Institute. There are just a plethora of wonderful resources, and quite often when I'm seeing parents, what I can do is send them links, really good links, to Beyond Blue's pamphlets on, are you caring for someone with depression? And here's a discussion starter. So there's a lot of wonderful material online.
But we've also got, in a sense, gone another step further. A lot of the apps that are now out there, you can go from the information to actually the program around your sleep-wake cycle, program about managing anxiety, program about dealing with stress in your life, and learn the skills. And I think, we teach this so much else in physical health. Here's what you have to do to get fit. Here's what it takes to lose weight. Here's what it doesn't. And actually make that, as we have, part of the school curriculum. You learn all this kind of stuff. We just haven't got quite as far. We've started well down that path, but actually going from information to skill acquisition to doing stuff. And then as you move along that path, sometimes you need help. Sometimes you need other professionals to assist you along that path. And certainly to exist in a community, and I think it's where schools are really important, to exist in a community that promotes that idea, that that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do with your mental health, just like with your physical health, in order to succeed.
It's reasonable, yeah. It's
perfectly normal.
Fine. Yeah,
it's a big part of yourself, your head. In fact, it's a really big part of yourself. And actually, in terms of success in school and in life, it's much more important than a lot of the other bits. If you're really going to enjoy and get pleasure out of life.
Well, I think school is a great influence for many different things. It's one of the only places where we're going to catch all adolescents at a certain point in their life. It's compulsory that they're at school until they're at a certain age. So we can influence in so many different ways, in so many different aspects. It's in our relationships with our students, in our conversations that we have with them. It's in assemblies and what we say to them. It's in our classes. It doesn't have to be a specific class around mental health or wellbeing.
I agree, Sarah.
You know?
The thing that I used to love so much when you go to class is when you had this teacher so engaged in what they were doing, you forgot all the other stuff.
Yep.
And you were thinking, you've taken me somewhere else, and that becomes an interest that then you might look up yourself. It's the wonderful things that happen when that teacher is doing their job, which I know half the time we're giving teachers so much more to do all the
It's
time.
not just the teachers, though. I mean, you know, schools are communities.
Yeah.
And so the students...
I haven't been to one for a long time.
There are
so
other people
tell me.
there. You know, well, I think one of the problems is the
Yeah,
danger in
that's
this area is teachers feel, oh my God, now
It's all
I've
us.
got to be the teacher, the educator, the social worker, the psychologist, you know, what else? Physical health person, you know.
Yep.
And that, I think, does become a sort of burdensome in the thing. But what teachers do normally is a key part of that. But involvement of parents with schools, the promotion of the connection between students. I mean, lots of schools have very good social hierarchies built in, student to student and across classes, etc., to build that community thing. I mean, as a parent of teenagers, I want my kids to go to school more, not less. You know, they're much happier there. They're with much more normal people than when they're at home.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is true, and it's true of the adolescent brain. It's much more focused on what are my friends doing than what do my parents think.
Yeah,
You know,
it's so annoying.
in a way that's biologically normal and socially normal. So we really need those places to function as communities and to see it just as core business to promote that community connection, because of the connectedness. We're a little lost in some ways in individual psychology these days and what just simply goes on in your head, as distinct from that you need to be connected with people to stay well.
For a number of our kids, it's a safe place for them.
Yeah, it
Very
may
much
be
so.
even the safest.
Yes, in many cases, yeah, it would, or in a number of cases, it can be. It's their safe haven, where there's structure, there's organisation, there's procedures,
Yep.
and there's a general concern about their welfare.
Can you build utopia there?
I can't know if you build utopia.
Close.
You can try.
Ian, always striving for the best.
They are model communities. In fact, one of the biggest problems we have with a lot of young people is when they leave school, they drop out of the social scaffolding that exists.
Yes.
The role models. I mean, seriously, you know, there are much better parent models for many of my children than me, right? You can see diversity.
But why is that, Ian? What are you doing wrong?
Well, you know,
kidding.
if you ask my daughters, lots. You know. But there are other models. There are other ways of being in the world. You know, however good individual parents are, that's just one way of being in the world. You can see other ways of being in the world. I mean, one of my teenage daughters, her male geography teacher, best person she ever met in her whole life. He's in the world differently. For a lot of young women, the way they see other women cope in the world with issues they've had to deal with in terms of like body image or self-esteem, that is different, and it gives them a model, a mentor, a way of being in the world. So we don't just talk about psychology, they see people coping differently, and that opportunity is fabulous. So it is an issue, a really major social investment. So it's capitalising on what schools do, but then promoting the really key bits of that, the modelling, the mentoring, the connection, because that's what really builds mental health.
I think kids learn teachers, not subjects. And when I'm doing my interviews with kids, what I actually always look for is some charismatic adult in their life that is going to make a difference. And looking at my own kid, there was just one or two teachers who were absolutely inspirational, who really made a difference for them and improved their well-being. I went to a school for emotionally disturbed teachers and I didn't have any at all, but it's not about me.
But honestly, you can have a great teacher for one term and it can turn your head around.
Absolutely.
Not your life, because you've still got to do that when you leave and all that, but it can turn your head around about how you think about something. And, look, full disclosure, my mother was a teacher, so I'm a big fan.
There we go.
But you can see, we've all had one. We've all had the teacher we didn't like, but we've certainly had at least one or two teachers that got us through.
Well, again, there's the teaching aspect. There's also the school friends, because not just... And the teachers are very charismatic and very important role models, but promoting the connections. Many people will have, you know, friendships they made at school, particularly later in school, that they continued throughout life. And they, you know, the stability in that and the representation of, you know, respect and emotional warmth and the interaction at key ages really matters. So, you know, how peers behave in schools, which is then moderated by schools in many ways. And the way in which that the school interacts with the peer interactions is critical.
Surprisingly, I'm agreeing with Ian. There's
exciting.
one. I reckon one of the greatest predictors of well-being for young people is, in fact, having a rich repertoire of friends. And I think where schools can really contribute to that is teaching kids how to obtain, maintain and retain those friendships, not just at school, but as Ian says, way beyond. And I think that will sustain them, builds resilience, that capacity to face, overcome and be transformed by adversity.
If you think mental health is constant happiness, well, remember this quote from Edith Wharton: if only we'd stop trying to be happy, we could have a pretty good time.